G'day guys, Pete here from Aussie English. It's another late night. It is another late night. And I just received an email which has really motivated me to do this video. So I'm going to leave the person anonymous, and then I want to talk about the problems they're facing because I'm sure that a lot of you guys are facing these same problems as well. Okay, so I might read out this email and maybe discuss the problems as we go through it, okay? Hey Pete, I hope you're good. I have successfully signed up to the Aussie English Classroom and I'm looking forward to the next 2 months to see how I go with that. Thought to share with you some stuff and seek your guidance. I was born in India and lived there for 20 years before I came to Australia last November. And so it's going to be about 1 year and 2 days now. Luckily, I did get my first job at a local Aussie restaurant just after a month of landing here. A month after I landed here. However, I faced a lot of discrimination because of my pronunciation of English and my accent, which is completely different from here in Australia. Subsequently, I figured out the fact that when I speak English, I am trying to translate from my native language to English, which people don't really get, and they tend to get cranky with me eventually as a result. For example, someone asked me at the restaurant the other day, "Have you got any more Mount Franklin water left with you?" And I was like, "We finished with it." You can't actually get finished with water. I should have said, "We've got none left." Eventually, my manager fired me from the restaurant, but I did get a new job offer afterwards. I'm glad to hear that, mate. I'm glad to hear it. So problems I'm facing now at the moment. I still translate and my pronunciation is still not like that of a native speaker. I can't actually find out where I should improve. It's not that I am not working on it and I don't know the Australian way of speaking, but it's more like I tend to fall back to the Indian way of pronouncing English when starting a conversation with someone. So it'd be really helpful if you can let me know your thoughts on this, as I think I need some native speakers' guidance on this. Kindest regards, the person. So I'm obviously going to send this video to them personally via email, but I thought, I've heard this story quite a few times. I've heard this story about having troubles with pronunciation and obviously confidence as a result when native speakers don't understand you, or anyone who speaks English as a foreign language also doesn't understand you. I've heard about the troubles of getting a job, and especially how nervous that makes people and how self-conscious they are about their English when they get a job in an English-speaking country. And I've also heard about people, obviously Australians in this case, native speakers, judging or discriminating against other people as well, which is always not okay. So let's just go through this and I'll try and cover it and give you my advice step by step. So the first thing you were talking about here, I faced a lot of discrimination because of my pronunciation in English and my accent, which is completely different from here in Australia. So first and foremost, I'm really sorry to hear that because it's not fair, and I think the average person who's going to discriminate against you obviously doesn't know how it feels to learn a second language. So I would try and treat that as water off a duck's back, although that's harder done than said. It's easier said than done. Just remember that people who are saying that probably are getting frustrated with themselves as well and not being able to understand you, and they also just have no understanding of what it's like to learn a foreign language and just how hard that is. So firstly, congratulations on learning Australian English, learning English, putting yourself through that process. Secondly, congratulations on entering into conversations with people where it is really uncomfortable, where you aren't as at home with the environment as those native speakers. It's not easy. It's not easy. So congratulations to you for doing that and for persisting with that. How to overcome that? The only way to really overcome that is to persist. So it's to remember that people who discriminate against you or treat you poorly, it's not a reflection on you as a person. They don't know you, at least I assume the ones discriminating against you don't know you. They're getting frustrated probably because they can't communicate and that's what they want to do. It's not that they think you're an annoying person as a human being, right? So it doesn't reflect on you as a person and your worth as a person. So please don't let it get you down. Please don't get depressed when people like that have those kinds of reactions or interactions. Just remember, okay, maybe this person's having a bad day, maybe this person's frustrated, maybe this person doesn't understand how to deal with this kind of situation, and just treat it as water off a duck's back, and just get back up on the horse and keep riding, right? Keep trying, because ultimately, the only way to move through that is to keep facing those situations, to keep dealing with uncomfortable situations and practicing your English like that. That is the only way to improve. So first step is don't be discouraged by assholes who treat you poorly because you are learning in English. Other things that you can do in those sorts of situations, if you're worried about that sort of thing happening, some of my students say that they usually preface a conversation. That is, they usually frame a conversation. They start a conversation by saying, forgive me if my English is not perfect. I'm still working on my English. Thanks for letting me work on my English. I hope you understand if I make some mistakes. Just bear with me, be patient, and just allow me to try and communicate. It's not my native language. That is a good practice because it sets up this dynamic between you and the other person where it's okay for you to now make mistakes, where the other person's going to be ready if you do mistakes, and they'll be more in a position to be like, oh, don't worry, I'll help you, I'll try and understand. Do you mean this? Do you mean this? So that's always a good way of having those kinds of interactions. It's showing that you are learning, you're a beginner or, intermediate, but not at the same level as that person. And that instantly puts that person on the back foot, showing them that they need to help, right? That they might have to take a bit more control of this conversation. In terms of working in hospitality, if you ever really run into issues, you can always say, look, again, I'm learning English. Sorry if there's any confusion. Would you like me to get my manager, right? Would you like me to get a native speaker? Because I know I might be confusing you, right? So that would be my advice there. But the biggest thing is just keep working on it. Keep working on your English. And maybe I need to talk about, and I did this in a previous video, practicing English in safe environments. So obviously, if the only time you're practicing English is when you're working, that's very difficult. And you can't afford to make many mistakes. So you're not going to, you're not going to allow yourself to play with English, to be a little more expressive, to try things you're not comfortable with, because you need to be, you need to be on it while you're working. So a quick fix for that is to make sure that you get into as many situations with native speakers as possible where that same stress, that same tension isn't there. So you can go to language meetups. I've mentioned that before. There are 2 in Melbourne that I know of, Lingos and Mundo Lingos. And actually, no, new to Melbourne as well. So there are 3 different language meetups. These are relaxed environments where you can meet native speakers learning your language. You can meet other foreign students or people learning Australian English, or it could be any English anywhere else if you're from all over the world, anywhere else. And those conversations are not stressful. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. You can afford to make mistakes. No one's judging you. Everyone is a learner. So if you want to work on your English and become better at speaking, especially with those kinds of situations, do more of them and try and get in as many situations as possible that are stress-free, where you feel comfortable and you feel like you can use your English more. If you're only ever practicing English at work, that is a very stressful way to practice. Okay, so I would really suggest trying to find another way of practicing where you're comfortable and happy and relaxed. Okay, and especially at these meetups, you can have a beer first to just chill out a bit and then get to know people and obviously make friends. The second thing that you were talking about here was translating in your head. And you also mentioned pronunciation. So I'll tackle pronunciation first. Pronunciation is an ongoing thing. I treat it with regards to Portuguese and French, the languages that I speak as foreign languages, as like going to the gym and doing weights, right? If you go to the gym and you train for, say, a year, or, less than that, 3 months, you're going to get really fit. You're going to get, muscles are going to enlarge, and you're going to get better technique. You're going to improve your strength. You're going to improve your cardio fitness. Everything's going to improve. But the moment you stop going to the gym, it goes downhill, right? As soon as you sit in a chair like this, you get back to work and, type on your computer and you're not going to the gym anymore, you're not exercising, things start to atrophy, right? They start to decrease. You can't lift the same amount. Your technique goes out the window, right? It gets worse and worse and worse. It's the same with pronunciation. It's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing. Even for me, learning French is the longest one that I've been learning since I was 13. So more than half my life. And I still have to work on pronunciation. So I would say practice your pronunciation actively. So that means find videos, find materials. You've signed up to the Aussie English Classroom. Go into the pronunciation course there and continue those exercises, right? So practice, practice, practice. Listen to contents, podcasts, TV shows, and actively copy what people are saying, the mimic technique, right? So if people say sentences and you understand what they're saying, pause, say the same thing. Try and imitate / mimic. Tried to say the two words there. Imitate, mimic. Try and copy the person as best you can, like an actor. Imagine that, right? If I say, "G'day guys, how's it going?" hit pause and literally be like, "Yeah, g'day guys, how's it going?" Try and copy me. Try and copy my mannerisms. And that's going to help you improve your pronunciation and make you sound a lot more natural. The second thing I would add there for pronunciation is try to identify the problems with your pronunciation, the specific areas you're having difficulty, right? We've got 24 consonants in English and we have 20 vowels. I think I got that the right way around. Not all of those are going to be problems for you. You might have a problem with a handful of them, maybe the TH sound, maybe the O vowel sound, O, right, and the TH sound. Identify the ones that you find really difficult, and instead of ignoring them, which a lot of my students do, they get by, because people understand if you can't do the TH, if you're French and you say ze instead of the, people still understand, but don't do that if you can. If you want to improve, you have to stop ignoring the problems, right? Like going to the gym, if I'm noticing my back muscles aren't growing very well and my technique when I'm doing the exercises to build my back is horrible, I obviously need to work on the technique to get my back to build. If you can't do a certain sound in English, don't give up. Go back and learn it, right? A good thing is just type in, TH pronunciation in YouTube, on Google. Look up my videos on pronunciation and you will find tutorials showing you how to perfect that sound and then practice that sound regularly, okay? At least for a few weeks, every day. Try and practice saying the, these, clothes, and practice them in sentences. So that's how I would be working on pronunciation. Constantly mimicking whole phrases, whole sentences of native speakers speaking so that you can get the intonation, the rhythm, everything like that going. But then also I would scrutinize, I would isolate those specific sounds that you're having trouble with. You're having trouble with a certain vowel, or maybe a certain consonant, or maybe how two sounds join together, right? How that sort of changes in English sometimes. You'll have like a T at the end of a word and a Y at the front of the other word, and instead of y, you'll have a ch sound, okay? So it's practicing that actively on a regular basis, and you'll definitely improve quickly. I think you'll surprise yourself, especially if you've been neglecting it until now. Sorry, this is a long conversation. The last one, number 3 that you mentioned, was translating in your head. The only way to get past this is by doing more. There's no quick fix, okay? It's literally like if I do, say I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's a martial art, right? Techniques that I have to do where maybe I'm choking someone, I'm doing an arm bar, I'm trying to get someone off me in this martial art. They require 10 movements sometimes. Put your hand here, pull this here, hold there, twist here. So you have to learn this sequence of movements. And when you first begin, you have to consciously think, okay, do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this. And you have to go through step by step, right? And that's what you're currently doing. You're thinking, okay, my language, I say this word, I use this, and then I say that. And then if I want to do that in English, I have to do this, and this, right? So the only way to get through that is by repetition to the point where bam, that's the response. So with the techniques in jiu-jitsu, eventually it doesn't become do this, do that, do this, do that. It just becomes this boom, 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 psh, like one movement, okay? And it's just a quick response. The moment your eyes see that option when you're fighting someone, you just do it and you haven't even thought about it. And that's what I'm doing currently with my English, obviously as a native speaker. I'm not thinking actively, what do I want to say? It's just coming out of my mouth. The way that that's happened over years and years and years and years is that I have been talking and making thousands, probably millions of errors and mistakes. So that is the thing. I would keep practicing by listen and repeat exercises like I do in my episodes on the Aussie English Podcast to work on pronunciation, but to also get used to conjugations so that you don't have to think as much. But more, I would be focusing on things that I'm always wanting to say as well. I still have to think when I want to say something more complex, when I want to use certain words, but I've practiced again and again and again 1,000 times these easy phrases that they just come like that, and I don't have to think of individual words. And so it happens with me in Portuguese with my fiancée. She's currently feeling morning sickness, even though it's 10:30 at night in the bedroom there. But when I speak Portuguese now, there are certain phrases that I don't have to think about. They just come out because I've said them so many times, right? For instance, you know, que tá fazendo neste momento? What are you doing at the moment? I'm just so used to saying that. It just comes out and I don't even have to think about it. So the way to get through translating in your head is say as much as possible, speak as much as possible. You're going to go through the process of having problems, having, you know, what was that word I wanted to say, this. But the only way to sort of improve that is by doing it more and more and more. Now, the advice I would give you if you want to actively practice this and not just do this in conversations with other people is to sit in a room like this with no one else and think about things you commonly want to say. So maybe you have to interact with people. You're working in a restaurant and you need to say, you know, things like, can I get you anything? Or like the thing you said here, have you finished with the water? Or there's none left. We've got none left. And I would practice speaking out loud like this, literally, you know, using my mouth as well as my head while I'm trying to use English, not just imagining what I want to say. And I would use those phrases. I would have pretend conversations with myself. I would speak out loud and practice those common things that I want to say. And that way, when you go out into the real world, they'll just come because they'll be on the tip of your tongue, right? You'll be thinking of them and then just boom, you'll just say it. You won't have to translate in your head. So again, I hope that helps. To fix the translation from one language to another, it's to just speak more and more and more and more. And eventually, that's going to become such a slow process to do that. Your brain already knows what it wants to say, and it's just going to go bang, you know, and just use the English. So I really hope that helps, mate. I know that a lot of other listeners and viewers here will have the same kind of problems because I've definitely heard from a lot of my students about this kind of interaction and issue in Australia. So I hope that helps. I hope it wasn't too long a video, guys. And if you would like to send me an email asking me a question that I can do a video on like this, feel free to at the Aussie English Podcast at gmail.com, or feel free to leave me a comment below and I will try and do a video when I have time. Anyway, guys, it's a pleasure chatting to you and I'll talk to you soon. See ya.